What's the richest country in the world? Is it Norway, Switzerland, Germany, or maybe Ireland? Well, surprise, surprise. If you take out tiny countries like Monaco or Liechtenstein from the list, the richest country in the entire world would be Luxembourg. Yeah, you heard it right, Luxembourg. This tiny nation boasts the highest GDP per capita on the entire planet. Although that is certainly not the most objective indicator since Luxembourg's population is only 660,000 people. But that's a topic for another time. So, what about Luxembourg's economy? It's a country where they never heard of unemployment. Average citizen salary is enough to kick back in the Caribbean with an all-inclusive package. Just to give you an idea, the average salary here exceeds $5,800 a month. And that's just an average. And what about highly skilled professionals? Of course, with such enticing work conditions, many Europeans from other countries want to move to Luxembourg in search of a better life. So much so that immigrants make up about 50% of the entire population. Who wouldn't want to seize an opportunity to move to the richest country in the world and embrace an almost guaranteed prospect of a luxurious life? But it's not all sunshine and rainbows, we have you know. Despite rosy statistics, Luxembourg's fortune might soon fade away. Just take a look at this graph. Up until 2008, Luxembourg was a shining example of economic development. Its economy was growing at nearly vertical rates. But 15 years ago, something went wrong. Luxembourg's economy took a downfall, and its growth disappeared into thin air. Now, how did such a tiny country manage to become so wealthy? How come its economic model began to decline 15 years ago? And can the richest country in the world solve this problem? That's the million-dollar question. Well, that seems simple enough. It's all about low taxes and a robust financial sector. Not really. Luxembourg has been a wealthy country for centuries. One of the main sectors that allowed for its economic growth from 1870 to 1970 wasn't banking, offshore accounts, or taxes. It was, in fact, steel industry. Thanks to its prime location in the heart of industrial Europe, nested among countries like Belgium, France, and Germany, Luxembourg managed to develop a massive steel industry with the most competitive companies in the world and cutting-edge technological processes of that time. And so, a country with a population of just 600,000 people became one of the largest steel exporters worldwide. By the way, here's a fun fact. Many skyscrapers in major American cities like Chicago and New York were built out of steel from Luxembourg. Surely, not all of its successes were due to metallurgy. Starting from the 1970s, the country began to develop its financial sector. And it was precisely then that low taxes started fueling economic growth. For instance, taxation in Luxembourg was so low that large companies only had to pay 1% of their profits in taxes. That's 96% less than what most companies in other European countries like Germany pay today. That's why many new tech giants like Spotify, Amazon, or Skype chose to set up their main businesses in Luxembourg, creating numerous job opportunities and initiating a massive cycle of growth, the kind that we showed you in the previous graph. Another reason for Luxembourg's massive success is the development of a large and advanced banking sector. It became the perfect complement to the growth of both local and foreign companies. So, Luxembourg's economy stood firmly on two pillars, a strong metallurgical industry and a powerful banking sector. These two directions were crucial for the country's prosperity. But all good things must come to an end. That's the thing people say. Today, Luxembourg's economy is causing serious concerns among European authorities. The European Union strongly urges Luxembourg to address its structural problems as soon as possible. But what exactly went wrong? Why has their wealth formula ceased to function? Take a look at this graph. It shows productivity dynamics in Luxembourg's services sector over the past few years. It's evident that since 2008, the most advanced companies, along with others, have significantly reduced their production level. In such a small and wealthy country like Luxembourg, the service sector plays an absolutely fundamental role in the economy. Just look at the numbers. About 80% of the country's GDP comes from the service sector. So, if this sector performs poorly, it becomes a big headache for the entire economy. How did Luxembourg's service sector end up facing such serious problems? The reason is, as all this time, a shortage of qualified personnel. Companies simply can't find enough workers. Today, Luxembourg faces a huge labor shortage. And this, of course, affects productivity. Take a look at the figures. Here you can see the percentage of companies in each country experiencing difficulties in hiring high-level specialists. According to OECD, that's Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, Luxembourg, among others, is a country facing significant hiring challenges. Due to the lack of personnel, Luxembourg companies struggle to implement innovations adequately. They find it difficult to adapt to new industries and changes. It's also much harder for them to transition to digital technology. And this certainly poses a serious obstacle to innovative production technologies, simply because they lack specialists. You might ask, why does the country struggle to attract qualified professionals despite offering incredibly high salaries? It's because living in Luxembourg is very expensive and many newcomers simply can't afford it. For instance, renting a regular 2-bedroom house in the capital can cost around $3,000 per month. And even if salaries seem very high at first glance, it still becomes a huge barrier for those wanting to move to the country. So if Luxembourg wants to restore its productivity and develop its businesses, it needs to start educating its citizens and fast. This could be done either through training programs within companies or by improving an entire education system. But that's not enough. The country will have to do everything possible to attract the best talents from abroad. And this is just a part of the problem. Remember when we mentioned banking sector at the beginning? How financing affected the economy over the past decades? Well, today Luxembourg banks are not what they used to be. Just like in the case with the technological sector, Luxembourg banks are losing efficiency and creating less added value. As a result, banks have become some of the least profitable in Europe. They now lag behind countries like Spain or Italy, where banks were never their strong suit. And you know what else undermines the economy of the world's only dukedom? You see, Luxembourg's problem, and not just theirs, began back in 2008 during the year of the Great Financial Crisis. The crisis hit them very hard, which is something we can all understand. After all, banking sectors hold significant weight in the country's economy. Following this crisis, Luxembourg government decided to take measures to ensure once and for all that it could avoid possibility of a failure financial bubble seriously affecting the country or even leading to bankruptcy. These measures involved adopting a series of tough and strict rules. But there's one but. The problem is that there are simply too many rules. Today, Luxembourg operates under the most complex banking rules in Europe, and this complicates business and increases costs a great deal. And it turns out that apart from strict financial regulations, Luxembourg also goes harsh on labor regulations, which are very extensive and costly in many professions. Let's put it this way, Luxembourg is very liberal when it comes to taxation, but the level of bureaucracy is simply off the charts. And this primarily concerns labor. Despite various reforms taken by the government in an attempt to make labor laws more flexible, Luxembourg is one of the European Union countries with the strictest rules. And this doesn't help attract professionals at all. One way or another, the situation remains unchanged. Another source of problems for Luxembourg is zombies, or rather zombie companies. Those that have been around for over 10 years but still can't cover their debt from their own profits. These companies, while technically not being dead, lack vitality of a profitable company. And this leads to a monstrous waste of resources. In other words, all their equipment, machinery, and employees work for zombies instead of working for other successful companies, utilizing their potential much more productively. And did you know that Luxembourg ranks 5th among developed countries in terms of the highest volume of production losses caused by zombie companies? Why are there so many zombie companies in Luxembourg? Well, that's because the state system responsible for declaring bankruptcy works very poorly and punishes entrepreneurs whose businesses aren't doing very well. Like those who experience business bankruptcy are legally required to wait at least 3 years before starting another business. And many banks prefer to continue financing these companies rather than declaring them bankrupt, because the process is much more complex than in other countries. That's why many companies that should go bankrupt due to their business model continue to operate, slowing down the economy. So what is the key to economic growth in developed countries? Research and development. And if you need more skilled workers, you have to invest in their training. Remember production level issues in Luxembourg? Well, now take a look at this graph. Luxembourg spends only 1.2% of its GDP on research and development, which, by the way, is less than in all other developed countries. So it's not surprising that they have so many productivity issues. What's more, the government doesn't offer any incentives to companies to increase investment. For instance, since 2018, Luxembourg government decided to abolish almost all assistance to companies that could change this trend. The conclusion is clear. If Luxembourg wants to return to growth, it will have to make many changes. Streamline laws, revise regulations, become more flexible, and start to invest in science more. But what do? The world calls for change. And that's all for now. Comment below if you think Luxembourg can solve its domestic problems, or if you think it will eventually be surpassed in terms of wealth by other countries. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you soon.